Welcome to Stoic Vivu, where we transform ancient wisdom into practical tools for your modern life. I'm your guide on this journey to discover how 2,000-year-old philosophy can solve today's problems. From workplace stress to relationship challenges. From financial pressure to that constant feeling that life is somehow passing you by. Here at Stoic Vivu, we believe that the greatest minds of ancient Rome and Greece left us a blueprint for living with unshakable inner peace, regardless of what chaos swirls around us. We take the profound teachings of Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, and Seneca and translate them into simple, actionable strategies you can use starting today. No philosophy degree required, just an open mind and a willingness to see life differently. Now, let me ask you something that might sound crazy. What if the secret to getting everything you want in life is to stop fighting against what you don't want? What if acceptance, that word that makes every ambitious person cringe, is actually your hidden superpower? I know what you're thinking. Acceptance? That sounds like giving up. That sounds like settling for less. That sounds like everything I've worked against my whole life. And you're right to think that way. We didn't get where we are by rolling over and accepting whatever life threw at us. We fought, we pushed, we refused to take no for an answer. But here's where the ancient Stoics blow our minds. They discovered that there are actually two types of acceptance. There's the weak kind, the resignation, the defeat, the throwing up your hands and saying whatever. That's not what we're talking about. Then there's the powerful kind, the acceptance that sees reality clearly, wastes zero energy on what can't be changed, and channels everything into what can be transformed. Think about it this way. Every moment you spend wishing it wasn't raining is a moment you're not using your umbrella. Every ounce of energy you burn resenting your height, your past, your circumstances is energy you're not investing in building your future. The Stoics called this the fundamental choice of life. You can exhaust yourself fighting reality, or you can accept reality and use it as your launching pad. Today, we're going to explore an ancient concept that will revolutionize how you handle every challenge, every setback, every plot twist life throws your way. We'll discover why the most successful people throughout history, from emperors to entrepreneurs, have used this principle to turn their worst moments into their greatest triumphs. And most importantly, you'll learn the specific techniques to apply this in your own life, starting the moment this video ends. So if you're tired of feeling like you're constantly swimming upstream, if you're ready to stop letting circumstances control your happiness, if you want to discover what it feels like to be truly unshakable, then you're in exactly the right place. Let's dive into the life-changing power of accepting what you can't control. 1. When your whole life burns down, the Edison story nobody tells. The flames reached 60 feet into the night sky, and Thomas Edison stood there watching his entire life's work turn to ash. It was December 1914, and his manufacturing complex in West Orange, New Jersey, containing years of experiments, prototypes, and nearly all his company's assets, was being devoured by an unstoppable inferno. The fire had started in the film room and spread with terrifying speed through buildings filled with chemicals and flammable materials. Fire departments from 8 surrounding towns rushed to help, but the flames were too intense, the devastation too complete. Edison's son Charles found his father standing in the freezing December air, his face illuminated by the orange glow of destruction. The younger Edison expected to see devastation on his father's face, maybe tears, certainly despair. Instead, He saw something that made him question his father's sanity. Thomas Edison was calm, almost serene. Then the 67-year-old inventor turned to his son and said words that would echo through history. "Go get your mother and all her friends. They'll never see a fire like this again." Let me translate this scene to modern times. Sarah Chun stands in the parking lot of her San Francisco tech startup, watching firefighters douse the smoking remains of her office building. 5 years of work, every prototype, every server, every backup drive that wasn't in the cloud gone. Her team of 12 employees stands behind her in shocked silence. The insurance, she already knows, won't cover half the damage. The venture capital funding she'd been counting on will certainly disappear now. 34. She's watching her dreams literally go up in smoke. This is the moment that separates those who crumble from those who rise. This is the moment the Stoics trained for their entire lives. Because while Sarah can't control the fire, while she can't turn back time, while she can't magically restore what's been lost, she has complete control over what happens next. And that control begins with a choice that seems impossible: accepting this moment exactly as it is. Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor who faced plagues, wars, and betrayals, wrote something that applies perfectly here. The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. Think about that for a second. The very thing blocking your path becomes your path. The obstacle doesn't just get in your way. It becomes the raw material for your next chapter. But Edison understood something even deeper that night. When reporters arrived at the scene, expecting to find a broken old man, Edison told them, "All our mistakes are burned up. Thank God we can start anew." He wasn't pretending the fire was good. He wasn't delusional. He was demonstrating the highest level of Stoic practice, taking an unchangeable fact and immediately finding its hidden advantages. Within hours, Edison had borrowed tables and set up temporary offices. He secured a loan from Henry Ford, not by begging or showing desperation, but by presenting his vision for an even better facility. 6 weeks later, his operation was partially running again. Within 6 months, it was fully rebuilt and more profitable than before the fire. The disaster had forced him to modernize equipment he'd been too busy to replace, to streamline processes that had grown inefficient, to let go of failed experiments he'd been too attached to abandon. Now, back to Sarah in that parking lot. She has 2 options. Option 1. She can do what feels natural. Rage against the unfairness. Spend weeks in depression. Blame the building's electrical system, her luck, the universe itself. Call her parents and tell them they were right. She should have taken that corporate job. Let bitterness poison every future venture. Many people would understand this response. Some would even call it normal. Option 2. She can do what Edison did, what Marcus Aurelius taught, what every Stoic philosopher discovered through hard experience. She can say, "This is my reality now. I cannot change what happened. But this fire has given me something I didn't even know I needed. A chance to rebuild without the mistakes, to pivot without the baggage, to create version 2.0 without having to maintain version 1.0. The ancient Stoics had a phrase for this: obstacle as fuel. Just as a fire consumes whatever you throw at it and grows stronger, a properly trained mind takes whatever life throws at it and uses it for growth. Seneca, advisor to emperors and one of Rome's wealthiest men, lost everything multiple times in his life. Exiled, property confiscated, eventually forced to take his own life. Yet he wrote, "Every new thing excites the mind, but a mind that seeks truth turns from the new and superficial to the old and profound." Here's what most people miss about the Edison story. The fire wasn't the first disaster of his life. He'd gone nearly deaf as a child. He'd been fired from multiple jobs. He'd had over 1,000 failed experiments before inventing the light bulb. Each disaster had trained him for this moment. Each previous acceptance had built his capacity for this ultimate test. The same principle applies whether you're facing a burned-down business, an ended marriage, a lost job, a health crisis, or any other form of life's fires. The question isn't whether you'll face your own version of that December night. You will. The question is whether you'll be prepared with the Stoic response, "This has happened. Cannot change it. Now, how do I use it?" Because here's the profound truth hiding in plain sight. Every single breakthrough in human history came after a breakdown. Every innovation emerged from frustration with the status quo. Every phoenix needs ashes. Your fire, whatever form it takes, isn't your ending. It's your raw material. The Stoics knew this 2,000 years ago. Edison proved it in 1914. And today, right now, this wisdom is waiting for you to claim it. 2. Stop fighting reality. It's making everything worse. Picture yourself in Los Angeles traffic on the 405. You're already 20 minutes late for the most important meeting of your career. The GPS shows solid red for miles ahead. Your hands grip the steering wheel until your knuckles turn white. Your jaw clenches. Your internal dialogue becomes a stream of profanity directed at every other driver, the city planners, and the universe itself for conspiring against you. Your blood pressure spikes. Your breathing gets shallow. And here's the kicker. None of this moves your car even 1 inch faster. This scene plays out millions of times every day across America, and not just in traffic. We fight reality when our flight gets delayed. We fight reality when it rains on our wedding day. We fight reality when we get passed over for the promotion. We fight reality when someone we love disappoints us. And every single moment we spend in this fight, we're not just losing, we're actively making everything worse. Marcus Aurelius, a marketing executive in downtown LA, used to be the king of fighting reality. Every morning, he'd check the traffic and curse. Every delayed project would send him into a spiral of blame and frustration. Every client rejection felt like a personal attack from the universe. He was constantly exhausted, not from his actual work, but from his endless war against what is. His team started avoiding him. His creativity dried up. His health began to suffer. All because he was burning his life force fighting battles that were already over. The ancient Stoics had a name for this exhausting way of life. Epictetus, who went from slave to revered philosopher, called it wanting things to happen as you want them to, rather than wanting them to happen as they do happen. Sounds simple, right? But this single shift in perspective is the difference between a life of constant struggle and a life of flow and power. Here's what happens in your body when you fight reality. Your amygdala, the brain's alarm system, fires constantly. Stress hormones flood your bloodstream. Your prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for good decisions, goes offline. You literally become dumber, less creative, and less capable of solving the very problems you're facing. It's like trying to think clearly while someone's screaming in your ear. That someone is you. But it goes deeper than just stress. When you fight reality, you're essentially declaring war on the present moment. You're saying, this shouldn't be happening. But here's the thing, it is happening. Your opinion about whether it should or shouldn't is completely irrelevant to the universe. The rain doesn't care that you planned an outdoor wedding. The traffic doesn't care about your meeting. The economy doesn't care about your business plan. Let me share what happened when Marcus Aurelius finally understood this. Stuck in that same 405 traffic one Tuesday morning, something shifted. Instead of his usual routine of rage and resistance, he asked himself a different question. What if this traffic is exactly where I'm supposed to be right now? Not in some mystical, everything happens for a reason way, but in a practical, Stoic sense. This is reality. Fighting it is optional. He turned off the angry talk radio. He called his assistant to reschedule the meeting. Then he did something revolutionary. He used the time. He practiced a presentation out loud. He called his mother, whom he'd been meaning to contact for weeks. He actually looked at the city around him, really looked, for the first time in years. By the time he reached his office, he wasn't depleted and angry. He was energized and ready. Seneca, the Stoic advisor to emperors, wrote, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." Think about that. The traffic is just cars moving slowly. It's our mental story about the traffic. This is ruining everything. This always happens to me. This city is impossible. That creates the suffering. The meeting being rescheduled is just a calendar change. It's our narrative about what it means that tortures us. This doesn't mean you become passive or stop caring. When Marcus finally accepted traffic as a reality of LA life, he didn't just shrug and do nothing. He started leaving earlier. He negotiated flexible hours. He moved closer to work. He scheduled important calls during commute times. But here's the key, he made these changes from a place of calm strategy, not frantic resistance. Acceptance gave him clarity. Fighting reality had only given him stress. The discipline of assent, as the Stoics called it, is like a martial art for your mind. In judo, you don't meet force with force, you redirect it. In Stoicism, you don't meet reality with resistance, you accept it and then respond. It's the difference between standing in the ocean trying to push back the waves and learning to surf. Consider Emily Thompson, a restaurant owner in Chicago. When COVID hit, she could have spent months raging against the lockdowns, the restrictions, the unfairness of it all. Many of her competitors did exactly that. They exhausted themselves fighting reality, posting angry rants on social media, refusing to adapt. Emily took the Stoic path. She said, "This is what's happening. Now what?" Within a week, she'd pivoted to takeout and delivery. She created meal kits. She turned her parking lot into an outdoor dining space. While others were still fighting yesterday's battle, she was already winning tomorrow's. Epictetus taught that we have control over our judgments, decisions, and actions, nothing else. Everything outside that tiny circle is not up to us. The weather, other people's behavior, the economy, our past, even our own bodies to a large degree are not up to us. But that tiny circle of control, that's where all your power lies. And you can't access that power while you're wasting it fighting what you can't control. The transformation happens the moment you stop fighting. It's like you've been driving with the parking brake on your whole life, and suddenly you release it. All that energy you were burning on resistance becomes available for response. All that mental space you were using for complaints becomes available for solutions. You're not giving up, you're gearing up. You're not being weak, you're being strategic. You're not accepting defeat, you're accepting reality so you can achieve victory. 3. The 2,000-year-old mental trick that changes everything. Imagine a technique so powerful that it transforms slaves into philosophers, prisoners into teachers, and victims into victors. A mental tool so effective that it's been secretly used by leaders, thinkers, and survivors for over 2 millennia. This isn't some modern self-help gimmick. This is the art of acquiescence, and it's about to revolutionize how you handle every challenge in your life. David Park sits in a Chicago coffee shop, staring at the email that just shattered his world. After 15 years with the company, after missing his daughter's recitals and his son's baseball games, after sacrificing weekends and holidays, he's being laid off. Restructuring, they call it. The severance package details blur through his tears. At 43, with a mortgage, 2 kids approaching college age, and skills that feel suddenly obsolete, David faces a choice that will define the rest of his life. 2,000 years ago, Epictetus faced a similar moment. Born into slavery, permanently disabled from a leg injury inflicted by his master, denied every freedom we take for granted, he discovered something that would echo through centuries. Don't seek to have events happen as you wish, but wish them to happen as they do happen, and all will be well with you. Now, before you throw your phone across the room, thinking this is just ancient toxic positivity, let me explain what Epictetus really meant. He wasn't saying to be happy about suffering. He wasn't preaching fake gratitude for genuine loss. He was revealing a technique so practical, so grounded in reality, that it became the foundation of Stoic practice. The art of acquiescence works like this. First, you clearly see what is. No denial, no sugarcoating, no pretending. David has lost his job. That's the reality. Second, you make a conscious choice to align your will with this reality. Not because you like it, but because fighting it is like trying to argue with gravity. Third, you ask the only question that matters. Given that this is my reality, what's my best move? Let's see this in action. David's first instinct is to rage, to send bitter emails, to badmouth the company on LinkedIn, to spiral into depression and self-pity. All completely understandable reactions, all completely useless. But then he remembers something his grandmother used to say: when life closes a door, stop banging on it. Turn around. There might be a better door opening behind you. Without knowing it, his grandmother was teaching pure stoicism. Marcus Aurelius put it this way: confine yourself to the present. The past, his years of service, his sacrifices, that's gone. The future, will he find another job? Can he pay for college? That's not here yet. The present is just this: a man with skills, experience, and severance pay, sitting in a coffee shop with choices to make. Here's where the ancient technique gets practical. David opens a new document and types, "What I cannot control." Under it, the layoff decision, the economy, his age, what others think, his past choices. Then he creates another heading, "What I can control," his response, his next steps, his attitude, his skills development, his networking, his daily actions. This isn't just positive thinking, this is strategic thinking. By accepting what he cannot control, David stops wasting energy on useless battles. By focusing on what he can control, he channels all that energy into useful action. Within an hour, he's gone from victim to strategist. The art of acquiescence has 3 levels, and most people never get past level 1. Level 1 is grudging acceptance. Fine, I'll deal with it. You stop actively fighting, but you're still resentful. Level 2 is neutral acceptance. It is what it is. You've made peace with reality. But level 3, where the real magic happens, is creative acceptance. This is my raw material. Now let me build something amazing. Seneca, writing to a friend facing exile, explained it perfectly. Every new thing excites the mind, but a mind that seeks truth turns from the new and superficial to the old and profound. What need is there to weep over parts of life? The whole of it calls for tears. Dark, maybe, but also liberating. Once you accept that life includes loss, setbacks, and pain, you stop being shocked by it. You start being prepared for it. Back to David. Week 1. He updates his LinkedIn, reaches out to his network, and starts applying for jobs. Normal stuff. But then the art of acquiescence kicks in deeper. He asks himself, what if this layoff isn't a disaster but a redirection? Not in a delusional way, but strategically. What had he always wanted to do but couldn't because of the golden handcuffs? Turns out, David had always dreamed of consulting, of being his own boss, of having the flexibility to attend those recitals and games. The steady paycheck had kept him trapped. Now, with severance as a runway, he has something he never had before: freedom to try. He starts reaching out not for jobs, but for consulting opportunities. He joins entrepreneurship groups. He takes online courses in areas he'd always wanted to explore. 6 months later, David's income exceeds his old salary. More importantly, he attended every single one of his daughter's senior year events. He coaches his son's baseball team. He works from anywhere, sets his own hours, and chooses his own clients. The layoff he thought would destroy him became the push he needed but would never have taken voluntarily. This is the power of acquiescence in action. It's not about being passive or weak. It's about being like water, taking the shape of whatever container you're in while maintaining your essential nature. It's about saying, this is my reality now. I accept it fully. Now watch what I can do with it. The technique works for everything. Stuck in a difficult marriage? Accept the reality of where you are, not where you wish you were. Then make clear-headed decisions. Dealing with health issues? Accept the diagnosis without wasting energy on denial. Then become strategic about treatment and lifestyle changes. Facing financial problems? Accept the numbers without shame or panic. Then create a realistic plan. Epictetus taught this to everyone from slaves to senators because it works for everyone. Your circumstances don't determine your response, your philosophy does. And when your philosophy is, I accept reality and then I act, you become unstoppable. Not because you're tough or special, but because you're aligned with the way the universe actually works instead of how you wish it worked. 4. Turn your worst days into rocket fuel. Marcus Aurelius wrote these words while camped on a frozen battlefield, surrounded by death and betrayal. What stands in the way becomes the way. The impediment to action advances action. He wasn't writing feel-good philosophy from a comfortable palace. He was discovering, in real time, how to transform the worst circumstances imaginable into fuel for greatness. Consider this scenario. Rachel Martinez, a New York entrepreneur, watches her startup implode in spectacular fashion. The product launch fails. Her co-founder embezzles funds and disappears. Major investors pull out. Her team of 12 dwindles to 2. She's personally liable for $200,000 in debts. At 31, she's facing bankruptcy, lawsuits, and the humiliation of public failure in a city that worships success. Most people would see this as the end. Marcus Aurelius would see it as fuel. Not metaphorically, not eventually, but immediately and practically. The Stoic emperor discovered something profound. Every obstacle contains within it the energy for its own transformation. Like a fire that grows stronger with everything thrown at it. A properly trained mind converts disaster into power. Here's how the alchemy works. When Rachel's world collapses, she has raw materials most people never get. The knowledge of exactly what doesn't work, the freedom that comes from having nothing left to lose, the connections forged in crisis, and most importantly, the strength that only comes from surviving what you thought would kill you. Seneca, who lost his fortune multiple times, wrote, "Difficulties strengthen the mind, as labor does the body." But he wasn't talking about difficulties making you tough in some vague way. He meant that obstacles literally create capabilities. The entrepreneur who's never failed lacks the instincts of one who has. The person who's never been betrayed lacks the judgment of one who has. The executive who's never faced bankruptcy lacks the resourcefulness of one who has. Let me show you exactly how Rachel turned her worst day into rocket fuel. First, she did something counterintuitive. She made a detailed list of everything she'd lost. Not to wallow, but to inventory her fuel. Lost funding? That meant no investor interference in her next move. Failed product? That meant detailed data on what customers actually wanted. Departed team? That meant no dead weight, only true believers remained. Embezzling partner? That meant hard-won knowledge about due diligence and trust. Next, she applied Marcus Aurelius' fire principle literally. She asked, "If I were building a fire, what would I throw in?" Dead wood, old assumptions about how startups should work. Dry leaves, outdated business models she'd been clinging to. Paper, the business plan that clearly didn't work. Each failure became fuel for the next iteration. Within 72 hours of her darkest moment, Rachel had a revelation. Her failed product had tried to solve a problem her customers didn't actually have. But through the failure, she discovered a problem they desperately did have. One her competitors were ignoring. The technology from her failed product could be pivoted to solve this real problem. The failure hadn't been a dead end. It had been expensive market research. The ancient Stoics called this the discipline of desire. Wanting what happens because what happens is fuel. When a blacksmith needs to forge steel, they don't wish for cool temperatures. They need intense heat. When an athlete needs to build muscle, they don't wish for light weights. They need resistance. When an entrepreneur needs to build a unicorn company, they don't need smooth sailing. They need the kind of pressure that creates diamonds. Here's where most people get this wrong. They think accepting obstacles means being passive. Oh well, my business failed. I guess that's that. That's not stoicism, that's defeat. True Stoic practice means saying, "My business failed. Perfect. Now I have the exact fuel I need for something better." It's not passive acceptance, it's active transformation. Rachel's transformation accelerated when she realized something crucial. Her spectacular failure had given her a superpower: fearlessness. What's the worst that could happen in her next venture? Failure? Been there. Bankruptcy? Faced it. Public humiliation? Survived it. She'd already lived through every entrepreneur's nightmares. Now she could take risks her competitors couldn't, because she'd already survived what they feared. 6 months after losing everything, Rachel launched her pivoted product with the 2 team members who'd stayed. No fancy office, they worked from her apartment. No venture funding, they bootstrapped with her credit cards and pre-sales. No grand launch, they started with 10 beta customers. But this time, every decision was informed by expensive lessons. Every strategy was tested by failure. Every move was made by someone who'd already lost everything and survived. 18 months later, her company sold for $50 million. But here's the part that matters. Rachel credits every bit of her success to that spectacular failure. Not in spite of it, because of it. The failure gave her insights her competitors lacked. The bankruptcy taught her financial discipline that her peers never learned. The betrayal developed her judgment about people. The public humiliation freed her from caring about others' opinions. Each disaster had been precisely calibrated to develop the exact skills she'd need for success. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "What we throw on the fire is fuel for the fire." He wasn't speaking metaphorically. He was describing a learnable, repeatable process. When obstacles appear, you don't endure them, you consume them. When setbacks strike, you don't survive them, you transform them. When disasters hit, you don't recover from them, you use them as rocket fuel. This isn't toxic positivity or delusional thinking. It's strategic alchemy. Every setback contains information. Every failure contains education. Every disaster contains opportunity. The Stoic doesn't pretend the obstacle isn't there. The Stoic says, "Thank you for the fuel," and gets to work. Therefore, your worst day isn't your enemy. It's your raw material. Your biggest failure isn't your shame. It's your education. Your deepest pain isn't your weakness. It's your untapped power source. 5. Why you'll thank your problems later, so why not now? Here's a strange experiment. Think back to the worst thing that happened to you 5 years ago. That breakup that shattered you. That job loss that terrified you. That failure that humiliated you. That diagnosis that changed everything. Now, be honest, would you be who you are today without it? Would you have the strength, the wisdom, the relationships, the perspective you have now if that terrible thing hadn't happened? Jennifer Walsh, a 38-year-old architect in Boston, can pinpoint the exact moment her life fell apart. Her husband of 10 years announced he was leaving for her best friend. The architecture firm where she'd worked since graduation laid her off the same week. Her mother was diagnosed with cancer days later. In the span of 7 days, Jennifer lost her marriage, her job, and faced losing her mother. She remembers sitting on her bathroom floor at 3 a.m., wondering how she'd survive. Fast forward 5 years. Jennifer runs her own successful architecture firm specializing in healing spaces, hospitals, therapy centers, wellness facilities. She's remarried to a partner who shares her values and vision. Her mother survived, and they're closer than ever. Most surprisingly, Jennifer maintains that those 7 days of hell were the best thing that ever happened to her. Marcus Aurelius understood this paradox deeply. He wrote, "When you arise in the morning, think of what a precious privilege it is to be alive, to breathe, to think, to enjoy, to love. But he wrote this while dealing with plagues, wars, and the betrayal of his closest allies. He'd learned something profound. Gratitude isn't about what happens to you. It's about what happens within you. The Stoics discovered that humans have a remarkable psychological pattern. With enough time and distance, we almost always come to see our past hardships as blessings. The relationship that ended, thank God, it freed you to find real love. The job you lost, perfect, it pushed you toward your true calling. The health scare, a wake-up call that changed your priorities. The financial crisis taught you what really matters. But here's the million-dollar question. If you're going to be grateful for it eventually, why wait? Seneca put it brilliantly, every new beginning comes from some other beginning's end. He understood that what feels like destruction in the moment is often construction in disguise. The demolition of your old life is the foundation work for your new one. But we can't see it while we're in the rubble. We only see it in retrospect, unless we train ourselves to see it in real time. Let's go back to Jennifer's story. In those first brutal months, she couldn't see any silver lining. But she remembered something her grandmother used to say, God's delays are not God's denials. Without realizing it, her grandmother was teaching Stoic wisdom, that timing we don't understand often serves purposes we can't yet see. The divorce Jennifer didn't want, it revealed that she'd been slowly disappearing in that marriage, making herself smaller to avoid conflict. The job loss she feared, it exposed how she'd been building someone else's dream instead of her own. Her mother's diagnosis, it forced conversations they'd been avoiding for decades and brought healing to old wounds. But Jennifer didn't wait 5 years to start being grateful. She began a practice that accelerated her transformation. Every morning, she'd write 3 things: what she'd lost, what it was teaching her, and what it was making possible. Day 1, lost my marriage, teaching me who I really am, making possible a love based on truth. Day 30, lost my job, teaching me to value my own vision, making it possible for my own firm. Day 90, almost lost mom, teaching me that time is precious, making possible deeper connection. This isn't about pretending pain doesn't hurt. When Jennifer's husband left, she grieved deeply. When she lost her job, she panicked about money. When her mother got sick, she was terrified. The Stoics never advocated for suppressing natural human emotions. What they advocated for was adding perspective to those emotions. Epictetus taught, it's not things themselves that disturb us, but our judgments about those things. The event is neutral. It's our story about the event that creates suffering or growth. Divorce isn't inherently good or bad. It's a change in legal status. Job loss isn't inherently good or bad. It's a change in employment. These are facts. Everything else is interpretation. Here's what happens when you start being grateful for problems in real time instead of waiting years. First, you skip the bitterness phase. While others spend years angry about their divorce, you're already building your new life. Second, you see opportunities faster. While others are still grieving their job loss, you're already launching your business. Third, you waste less time. While others spend years wishing things were different, you're already making them better. The practice is simple but not easy. When something difficult happens, ask yourself, how will I see this in 5 years? Then ask, what if I could see it that way now? Not to bypass the pain, but to add wisdom to it. Not to pretend everything's fine, but to recognize that everything's useful. Jennifer's architecture firm now generates triple what her old salary was. But more importantly, she designs spaces specifically for healing because she understands what broken people need. Her new marriage is built on radical honesty because she learned the cost of hiding yourself. Her relationship with her mother is profound because they no longer take time for granted. Would Jennifer choose to go through those 7 days of hell again? No. But would she trade who she became because of them? Never. And that's the Stoic insight. We don't choose our obstacles, but we can choose to be grateful for them now instead of later. We can choose to see them as teachers now instead of later. We can choose to use them as fuel now instead of later. Marcus Aurelius wrote his private journal, never intending it to be read. In it, he revealed his secret. The universe is change. Our life is what our thoughts make it. Your problems aren't waiting to become blessings someday. They're blessings now, disguised as problems, waiting for you to recognize them. In essence, the time between problem and gratitude is wasted time. Why not skip to the end? 6. When life breaks you open, a modern Stoic's recovery. Sometimes life doesn't just challenge you, it breaks you open completely. Not a minor setback you can philosophize away, but a shattering so complete that you wonder if you'll ever be whole again. The Stoics knew these moments intimately, and they discovered something profound. Being broken open isn't the end of your story. It's the beginning of who you're meant to become. Michael Chun was 42 when the accident happened. A software engineer in Seattle. He was cycling to work when a distracted driver ran a red light. Michael woke up 3 days later paralyzed from the waist down. In an instant, everything that defined him, marathon runner, rock climber, the guy who took the stairs 2 at a time, was gone. The doctors delivered their verdict with clinical detachment. He'd never walk again. For weeks, Michael lay in that hospital bed consumed by rage. Not the clean, purposeful anger that motivates change, but the poisonous kind that eats you from inside. He pushed away visitors, snapped at nurses, and spent hours staring at his useless legs, willing them to move. The athlete who'd conquered mountains couldn't even conquer his own bladder. The man who prided himself on independence now needed help with everything. Seneca wrote, "Every new beginning comes from some other beginning's end." But when you're lying in a hospital bed, unable to feel half your body, those words feel like mockery. When your identity is shattered, when your future is erased, when your very sense of self is gone, philosophy seems useless. And that's exactly when you need it most. The turning point came from an unexpected source. Michael's physical therapist, a former army medic named Maria, had seen broken bodies before. But more importantly, she'd seen broken spirits rebuild themselves. She didn't offer empty platitudes or toxic positivity. Instead, she shared a simple truth. Your body is broken. That's a fact. But your response to that fact? That's still entirely up to you. Maria introduced Michael to Marcus Aurelius, the emperor who wrote his greatest philosophical works while his body was failing from plague. She read him passages from Epictetus, the slave with a crippled leg who became Rome's greatest teacher. She showed him that physical limitation and spiritual freedom aren't opposites. They're often partners. But here's what made the difference. Maria didn't just share philosophy. She shared strategy. You have 2 choices, she said. You can spend your energy mourning who you were, or you can invest it in discovering who you can become. The first keeps you trapped in a body that no longer works. The second sets you free. Michael's recovery began not with his legs, but with his mind. He started small. Instead of focusing on what he couldn't do, he listed what he could. He could still code. He could still think. He could still create. He had his upper body strength. He had his intellect. He had time, endless time that he used to fill with physical activity. The Stoics teach that when we're broken open, we discover what we're really made of. Not in some poetic sense, but literally. When Michael's identity as an athlete was stripped away, he discovered something underneath. His identity as a creator. When his body was limited, his mind expanded. When his physical world shrank, his intellectual world exploded. 6 months into recovery, Michael made a decision that shocked everyone. He returned to work, but not to his old job. He started a company developing adaptive technology for people with disabilities. The engineer who'd built apps for convenience now built tools for independence. The athlete who'd conquered mountains now helped others conquer daily life. Epictetus taught, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." But reaction isn't just about attitude, it's about action. Michael's reaction took the form of code. Every line he wrote was a small rebellion against limitation. Every feature he developed was a bridge between disability and capability. Every user who regained independence through his tools was proof that being broken open reveals new possibilities. The company grew rapidly, not because Michael was inspirational, he hated that word, but because he understood needs that others couldn't see. He knew the frustration of smart home tech that assumed you could stand. He understood the rage of fitness apps that required working legs. He experienced the isolation of social platforms that didn't accommodate different abilities. His brokenness became his market research. His limitations became his innovations. But the real transformation went deeper. The old Michael measured success in miles run and mountains climbed. The new Michael measured it in problems solved and lives improved. The old Michael's identity was tied to his physical capabilities. The new Michael's identity transcended physical form. He hadn't just adapted to his limitations, he'd been transformed by them. Seneca wrote, "Difficulties strengthen the mind, as labor does the body." Michael discovered a corollary. Devastating difficulties transform the soul. Not by making you tough in some macho sense, but by breaking you open to possibilities you couldn't see when you were whole. The athlete who needed to be physically superior discovered the power of intellectual contribution. The man who prided himself on independence discovered the strength in interdependence. 3 years after the accident, Michael gave a talk at a tech conference. He rolled onto stage in his wheelchair and said, "3 years ago, a distracted driver gave me the greatest gift of my life. Not the accident, I wouldn't wish paralysis on anyone. But the breaking open that followed revealed who I really was beneath all the running and climbing. It forced me to stop measuring my worth in miles and start measuring it in impact." The audience was silent. This wasn't inspiration porn. This was strategy. Michael explained how limitation breeds innovation, how constraint forces creativity, how being broken open reveals strengths you never knew existed. He shared his daily practices, his mental frameworks, his practical philosophies. He showed them that transformation isn't about overcoming your limitations. It's about being transformed by them. Today, Michael's company serves millions of users worldwide. He still can't walk, but he's helped thousands navigate their own limitations. He still can't climb mountains, but he's built bridges others thought impossible. His body remains broken, but his impact is whole. Most importantly, he's discovered what the Stoics knew. When life breaks you open, you don't return to who you were. You become who you were meant to be. 7. Your daily 5-minute practice for unshakable peace. What if I told you that 5 minutes each morning and 5 minutes each evening could fundamentally change how you experience every challenge, setback, and surprise life throws at you? Not through magical thinking or empty affirmations, but through a practice so effective that Roman emperors and Greek philosophers used it to maintain clarity amid chaos. Today, you're going to learn exactly how to build your own fortress of inner peace, brick by brick, day by day. Sarah Williams, a nurse in Denver's busiest emergency room, discovered this practice at her breaking point. After 12-hour shifts filled with life and death decisions, she'd come home wired, anxious, and unable to sleep. The stress was destroying her marriage, her health, and her ability to care for patients. Anxiety medication helped temporarily but left her foggy. Therapy provided insights but not daily tools. Then a colleague mentioned something that sounded too simple to work: a 5-minute morning practice based on Stoic philosophy. Here's exactly what Sarah does now and what you can start tomorrow morning. First, before checking your phone, before coffee, before the day's demands crash in, sit quietly for 1 minute and ask yourself, what is in my control today? Not a vague mental note, but a specific written list. Sarah writes things like, my response to difficult patients, my preparation for rounds, my attitude during short staffing, my words to colleagues. Then she writes a second list. What is not in my control today? This includes whether we're short-staffed, which patients arrive, how doctors respond, traffic on my commute. This simple exercise, based on Epictetus' fundamental teaching, takes 2 minutes and immediately clarifies where to invest your energy. By acknowledging what you can't control, you stop wasting mental resources on impossibilities. By identifying what you can control, you focus your power where it actually matters. Next comes the game changer, scenario planning. For 2 minutes, Sarah mentally rehearses the day's likely challenges, not to create anxiety, but to prepare responses. Marcus Aurelius called this premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of difficulties. Sarah thinks, if we're short-staffed, I'll prioritize critical cases without complaining. If a patient yells at me, I'll remember they're scared and respond with compassion. If a colleague snaps, I'll assume they're stressed and offer help. This isn't pessimism, it's preparation. Just as athletes visualize plays before games, Stoics visualize responses before challenges. When the predicted difficulty arrives, you're not surprised or reactive. You're prepared with a planned response that aligns with your values. The final morning minute is for what Seneca called the view from above. Sarah imagines herself floating above the hospital, seeing the bigger picture. Her bad shift, one of thousands happening globally. Her difficult patient, one person in pain among millions. This isn't to minimize her experience, but to add perspective. Problems that loom large at ground level reveal their true size from above. That's it. 5 morning minutes. 2 for control clarity, 2 for scenario planning, 1 for perspective. But the practice isn't complete without its evening counterpart. Before bed, Sarah spends 5 minutes in what Marcus Aurelius practiced nightly: reflection without judgment. First, she reviews the day's challenges and her responses. Not to beat herself up for mistakes, but to learn. When I snapped at the resident, I was hungry and tired. Tomorrow I'll pack extra snacks. This isn't self-criticism, it's strategic analysis. Next, she identifies one moment where she successfully applied Stoic principles. Maybe she stayed calm during a code blue. Perhaps she helped a struggling colleague instead of complaining. Maybe she simply accepted a traffic jam without rage. Acknowledging these victories, however small, reinforces the practice and builds confidence. The third evening minute is for what went right despite being outside her control. The emergency surgery that succeeded against odds. The colleague who covered her break without being asked. The patient who thanked her unexpectedly. This trains the mind to notice gifts as readily as it notices obstacles. The fourth minute is for tomorrow's primary intention. Not a to-do list, but a single quality to embody. Tomorrow, I will practice patience. Or tomorrow, I will respond with compassion. One focus, clearly stated, that becomes your North Star for the next day. The final minute is for gratitude, but not the generic kind. Specific gratitude for today's difficulties. I'm grateful for the short staffing because it taught me efficiency. I'm grateful for the difficult patient because they taught me patience. I'm grateful for my exhaustion because it means I served fully. This reframes every challenge as a teacher, every obstacle as education. After 3 months of this practice, Sarah's transformation was remarkable. Not because her job became easier, emergency rooms don't suddenly become Zen gardens, but her response to the chaos changed completely. Colleagues noticed her unshakable calm during crises. Her marriage improved because she stopped bringing hospital stress home. Her sleep improved because she'd processed the day before bed. But here's the key. Consistency matters more than perfection. Some mornings, Sarah only manages 3 minutes. Some evenings, she falls asleep mid-reflection. The Stoics understood that practice means practice, not perfection. Marcus Aurelius himself wrote, "Be like the rocky headland on which the waves constantly break. It stands firm, and round it the seething waters are laid to rest." You don't become that headland overnight. You become it through daily practice, 5 minutes at a time. Each morning's clarity builds on yesterday's. Each evening's reflection deepens tomorrow's wisdom. Gradually, imperceptibly, you develop what the Stoics called ataraxia, unshakable tranquility. This practice works whether you're a nurse in Denver, a CEO in New York, a teacher in Chicago, or anyone, anywhere, facing life's inevitable challenges. The external storms don't stop, but your internal peace becomes unshakable. Not through denial or detachment, but through daily discipline. 5 minutes in the morning to prepare. 5 minutes in the evening to reflect. 10 minutes total to build a lifetime of resilience. Start tomorrow. Not next week when things calm down, they won't. Not when you feel ready, you won't. Start tomorrow with 5 imperfect minutes. Because as Seneca taught, every new beginning comes from some other beginning's end. Your beginning starts with tomorrow's sunrise and 5 minutes of ancient wisdom applied to modern life. You're already stronger than you know. As we reach the end of today's journey, I want you to realize something profound. Everything we've discussed, every principle we've explored, every strategy we've shared, you've already been using them. Maybe not consciously, maybe not consistently, but you've been practicing Stoicism your entire life. Remember that breakup that devastated you 5 years ago? You accepted it and moved forward. That's Stoicism. The job loss that terrified you? You found another path. That's Stoicism. The health scare, the financial crisis, the family drama, you're still here. You survived. You adapted. You grew. That's pure Stoicism in action. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." But here's what he didn't need to add. You've been proving this truth your whole life. Every challenge you've faced has been training. Every setback has been an education. Every moment of acceptance has been building your strength. The difference now is awareness. Now you know why you survived. Now you understand the philosophy behind your resilience. Now you can consciously apply what you've unconsciously practiced. You're not learning something foreign, you're recognizing something familiar. You're not becoming someone new. You're uncovering who you've always been beneath the noise and worry. Think about water. It doesn't try to be strong. It simply flows around obstacles, finding the path of least resistance while simultaneously carving through solid rock over time. That's you. You've been flowing around life's obstacles while quietly developing the power to transform them. The only thing that's changed is you now know your own strength. This isn't the end of your Stoic journey. It's the beginning of your conscious practice. Tomorrow morning, when life presents its first challenge, you'll recognize it as an old friend. When difficulties arise, you'll see them as fuel. When reality doesn't match your plans, you'll adapt with the wisdom of 2,000 years of philosophy flowing through your modern life. The ancient Stoics would be amazed to see you, living in a world they couldn't imagine, facing challenges they never dreamed of, yet applying their timeless wisdom with perfect relevance. You're not just learning from history, you're making it. You're not just studying philosophy, you're living it. Here at Stoic Vivu, we're building a community of modern Stoics just like you. People who refuse to be victims of circumstance, who transform obstacles into opportunities, who find peace in the storm. If today's message resonated with you, if you're ready to join thousands of others on this journey of practical wisdom, then subscribe to our channel right now. Hit that notification bell so you never miss a lesson. Like this video if it spoke to you. Share it with someone who needs to hear that they're stronger than they know. Remember, you don't need to be perfect. You don't need to master everything immediately. You just need to start where you are with what you have, knowing that you already possess everything required for an extraordinary life. The wisdom is ancient, but your story is just beginning.